Welcome to this week's episode of our show, True Data Ops. I'm your host, Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior. Each week, we will bring you a podcast covering all things data ops with the people that are making data ops what it is today. My guest today is data thought leader, expert solutions architect, and Snowflake data superhero, my friend Frank Bell. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thanks, Kent. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, as before we jump in, I'm sure there's people on the stream here today that may not know that much about your background. So, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of your background here in data management and Snowflake and all such things.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep the sordid history shorter, but I think it parallels a lot of stuff with some of your friends with the Data Vault and other things. I started in the early. I got a degree from Stevens Institute of Technology, a bachelor's of engineering in electrical engineering, computer science, and I was doing stuff like Fortran back there, and I had an ROTC scholarship. So I was in the Air Force from 1992 to 1996, and that's actually where I was introduced to databases for the most part.
Yeah.
Very early Oracle, and I kind of laughed because at that time, the Air Force was probably one of the biggest spenders in technology. So we made basically sales reps rich. I still remember the Oracle lady after we bought back then $30-50 million because we're basically building. It ended up being called the Global Command and Control System, but it was basically the air warfare system that did the air tasking order and everything. So that's really where I started with databases was there, and we built a lot of that command and control system off of Oracle. And back in the day, that was SunSpark 2, SunSpark 10, 20s, and I was on. It dated me, but I did a lot of work with moving things to Ada, and also I was on Bill Joy's original Java Usenet list, back in the day. So fast forward to that, that's where I really started to really enjoy databases and data, and then after that, I left the Air Force and worked with a startup called City Search, which ended up being one of the first 2 startups in LA. That was on the internet. I just wanted to get an internet at that time. And we did a ton of database work there with the old players too, Informix, Sybase, SQL Server. And that's kind of where I started to get, again, more with that. And I worked at Universal Studios for a while, but always within data. And then I helped with another consulting firm. And then we started our consulting firm. And the thing that we differentiated with the firm was, and I think this, after listening to Randy, your guest last week, it resonated with me because when I had seen it in the Air Force, we'd built all these systems, and then we'd worked for Universal Studios and MCA Records, is there was a lack of work together with the business side and the technology side. So when we founded that company, the tagline was where business meets technology. And that's still the premises that we have today as we've launched other companies is how can we intersect that, and especially data, with that. So we ran that company for about 20 years. Towards the end, we jumped onto Snowflake, and we just got it. So in 2018, when we were probably like you, we got there, and I know you're friends with Todd Bouchain. So, we got there, and it was less than 400 people. And I still remember the first call I had with them. I said to the SDR, I said, if Snowflake does all this, then why isn't everybody using it? So it was just so differentiated. And then we became one of the fastest growing partners. 2018, 2019, we sold the business, and the business was eventually acquired by Accenture. So that's really kind of the past. And during the last few years, I've done a lot of thought leadership around. I published a blog on the future of data collaboration. I was one of the earliest people to kind of see the network effects of the data marketplace, and we helped Prasanna. We actually helped do the R&D and build the first data clean room with our client VideoAmp.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. And you gave a presentation there at the LA Snowflake users group that we run
Yes.
too.
Yeah. No, I remember. That I remember. Yeah, that was
So
at Hulu, right? At the Hulu
no, well,
headquarters.
we had one there too, but we had one at Video Amp is
Oh,
where
that's right. Yeah.
I think,
That was a busy week.
yeah. And then actually it was Justin Langseth, I think, who gave the presentation there. But yeah, so I think the thing with Snowflake and data ops that we've been lucky enough to do is we're always looking for how things can be automated more, how things can have higher quality, and I think that's when I read through the True Data Ops 7 pillars, that's really a lot of what I see. So it really aligned with our philosophies of data, AI, and automation. And like I said, we were early on Snowflake in 2018. Why we grew so fast is because we pretty much just focused on Snowflake because we thought we've been building data warehouses, for Ticketmaster and AG and many others on Oracle, and then Teradata, and then some Netezza. But Snowflake was just so differentiated. That's why we moved to just really focus on that. Became one of the fastest growing partners before we sold it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a history. You saw what was happening, and you've kind of rolled with it like I did in my career into the new things and into the data and databases, and then looked at Snowflake as like, okay, this is kind of a no-brainer, right? I'm with you. Of course, that was your question, is why isn't everyone using it? Well, that was part of my job, right? Was being the evangelist and making sure people knew about it. You can't use it if you don't know about it. So that was kind of what we were all doing back then. So, what are you seeing today in the data sphere? What are you thinking that's hot? Anything out there that you think is hype that we should just kind of maybe ignore?
That's a really good question. Well, there's definitely a lot of hype, and a lot of what our work at IT Strategist is about is just trying to, sort between the hype and the real things. I got to be careful what I say because it'll get some people distressed potentially. But I think from a positive trend in the stuff that I'm seeing is I still see a lot of stuff. Snowflake's making a lot of great moves, like the Streamlit acquisition. I really see a huge move to data products or data apps. It was kind of a bummer that that native apps got pushed out further, but I'm sure it's going to come out really good. And since that's going to happen, I think we're going to see a wave of consolidation around a lot more data apps, a lot more centralized data. I mean, there's a whole movement now, but again, it's suffering from the same thing, that just a lot of people don't realize that we actually have data sharing with no movement on Snowflake and the data
Hard to
marketplace.
imagine they still don't get that.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's because it's so ingrained. I mean, we were a huge provider to our consultant to Ticketmaster and AG, and it's funny because I met one of the guys, I think it was in Orlando Magic, at one of the Snowflake events, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know why we're not doing data sharing with Ticketmaster yet." Because like we built those ETLs and ran them for 10, 15 years. And, there's like undoubtedly not just them, but all these ETL pipelines that you break, even if you build them really well, sometimes the source systems had issues or something. And, like it's like you can't build for every single issue that can happen. And so if you move to data sharing, it's like you remove all that complexity. So I see that as more people get educated, that's happening. Data products, I think this whole thing with Chat GBT and the AI pieces, there's a lot of movement now on people are starting to get not just what you can do with a Chat GPT or interactive tool set like that, but also how you can automate data. So a lot of the stuff we're doing at ITS Snowflake Solutions is, besides we're building this optimization tool, is I'm also seeing a lot of opportunity for not just like chat GPT, but a lot of interactions where a lot of data automation is happening. And a lot of the foundation of that honestly is the pillars of DataOps.live, making sure that things are automatically tested. I still think to this day, most organizations aren't doing that very well. And that's a huge, huge step that has to happen to get to more reliable data and, faster development processes and better CI/CD.
Yeah, so you're starting to touch on this already here. Wanted to get your perspective on where you really see, data ops and these concepts of true data ops and 7 pillars. How's that really fit into our modern data space and what we're all trying to do these days?
Yeah, well, I think the data ops side, the DataOps.live guys and the true data ops, they've done a pretty good job at articulating, these 7 pillars. And a lot of it, again, is similar principles that we've been following. I think it's becoming, if for actual growth and for actual, real improvement, all those pillars are pretty essential. Uh, so I mean, I still think it's really early though. Like, we actually worked when I was with Accenture. We worked with Roche too, and I know Paul and Omar. I don't know if they're on
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah, we're
they
talking to Paul in a couple of weeks. So in March, Paul Rankin will be one of my guests. Yeah, Paul and Omar and I go back, a bunch of years to when they first engaged with Snowflake.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because when we sold to another company, and the company Fairway Technologies was acquired by Accenture. Uh, Paul was still at Accenture at the time, and so they brought me
That's right.
in as the Snowflake subject matter expert, and I kind of gave them a vision of where Snowflake could help them. And then Paul moved over there, and it's just funny that he became, he's one of the people that was an advocate for DataOps.live, and it was pretty awesome to see how well it worked for them at Roche. So, but I think, to be quite honest, they're really like a leader in this. They're almost on another side of the chasm because yeah, I just think,
Yeah.
and I have to say, even I was resistant when you guys first published it, the True Data Ops or something. I'm just like, oh, this is just marketing material. But once you read through it and think through it as a data practitioner, data thought leader, it starts to resonate. And I didn't give my full background, but I have kind of a unique perspective from, like I said, the business and technology side, because I also got an MBA from UCLA in 2001, and that's when I started the company. So I have kind of this engineering background mixed with Air Force leadership, mixed with an MBA, and we won like some consulting award. We worked with this company, HNC, which you're probably familiar with. They were the ones who originally started the neural networks, and that was the project we worked on.
Yeah.
So that gave me an early view of neural networks and AI and how that worked. And the point I'm bringing up about this is it's interesting to see that the true data ops really hits on both business and technology principles. And I think that's one of the reasons why it does resonate with me, because of having that background and being an entrepreneur, working a lot on the business side. A lot of what we built was marketing and sales systems, from 1999 to 2019. I was impressed with how a lot of the pillars, and especially the collaboration, hit upon a lot of business principles. And it's not like your guest last week, Allison, too. I really think it's key. And now we have the tools much more to get beyond all this hype of, and even the data mesh and all these things. We really just got to break them down into core systems. And so, just on another point, when you're asking about what do I see with data ops and what's hot, like I said, data products, data mesh. I'm still like, this will probably, I don't know what people will resonate with this, but I always kind of picture. I worked with Hadoop too in whatever 2010 and on, but I honestly think the data lake only came about originally because the data warehouse just couldn't scale. Like if Snowflake had been
Yes, exactly.
there, I don't think it would have been as big a thing as it is now. Is there a need for some of them? Sure, you're getting the petabyte side. I mean, there's some big players we work with, and Accenture for sure has these massive petabyte data lakes for clients. But 90% of people probably wouldn't need it. But yeah, there was nothing that scaled then. And yeah, I
That you
mean,
could afford, that most companies could afford
oh
for
yeah.
sure. I mean,
And
that was
also,
it. Yeah, you
I
couldn't
mean,
begin to build an Oracle system or a Teradata system that was that big. It would just be, you just couldn't afford it. There's just no way to do it and justify it even from a business perspective.
yeah, exactly. So on the last part, what else I see coming is we came up with this concept of automated modern data stack. I think we sort of stole it or enhanced it from George and Taylor stuff at Fivetran. But the way we put it together, Snowflake is the base, Fivetran's part of it. We're really excited about, and I think you're an advisor there too, coalesce.io. It's
Yes.
really the first T system, I'll call it, that really it actually follows a lot of the DataOps.live or the true DataOps principles.
Right.
And
Yep.
so we've been really impressed with their platform and what that can do, because it's again kind of as we saw Snowflake, we see that as unique and differentiated from everything else out there in the market. And then we also in that pipeline, we have our partner High Touch, and we've been working with Sigma Consulting or Sigma Computing for a long time too. I just know that Sigma will never fail because Spicer's behind it too. So
well, true, and it's basically like Excel, and obviously Excel has not gone away in the 20 plus years that I've been doing data warehousing. It's still, the number one preferred BI interface for analytics. And so, yeah, Sigma hit on that very, very hard with their interface and, get that, paradigm that people are familiar with. And it makes it a lot easier for people to adopt when you see something like that. Yeah, no, I think all these guys, the collaboration pillar, being able to do auditing through lineage, being able to break things down into small components, having the governance, having having a UI that is easy for people to use, that they don't have to be an expert coder in order to make things happen. And if we're going to get to your vision there, the automated, I think that's a great way, automated modern data stack, and trying to apply these principles from true data ops, we've got to lower the barrier to entry. We got to make it easier for people to be successful, for them to deliver value from the data as quickly as possible. I mean, it's all, to me, it's like an evolution of agile and then DevOps, and now we've applied all of that into the data ops world. In fact, the original Agile manifesto that inspired us to do the pillars of true data ops, or it's not the Agile DevOps. There was a data ops manifesto that was based on the Agile manifesto, and then with the Agile manifesto, there was a bunch of principles which I used to teach people about all the time. And so he's like, we need the same thing on the data ops side. The data ops manifesto is awesome and gets people thinking in the right direction, but we wanted to get a little more practical and say, what does it really take? And that's what you're seeing there. And I think your discussion of this automated modern data stack, with Snowflake as the base. I mean, I'm definitely a Snowflake fanboy, always will be, as are you, based on your T-shirt. That seems to be the easiest way to get there right now.
Yeah, and I think for anybody who's listening who doesn't know Snowflake or doesn't understand this, probably the biggest innovation at like Thierry, Benoit, Marcin, or whoever came up with this is that micro partitioning write ahead technology to allow the zero copy clone. I think that's by far, like, we always look at separation and compute and storage, and hey, all that stuff. And there's like 8 other awesome, very differentiated features, especially 2018. But that, if you're talking about data ops, I think that's the main thing. Because I mean, all this stuff I used to like kind of get annoyed, like this agile data warehousing before this. It's like you couldn't do it. It's kind of like bullshit, because like we try to do it, but like what happens if you have like a petabyte Teradata system? You're gonna anything had to be copied.
Right.
So there was
You could never test at scale. You couldn't do development at scale because it
exactly.
was too inexpensive. And Justin and Guy, who are the founders for DataOps.live and helped author this whole true data ops philosophy, we came to the conclusion one day is like, in order to meet the, sort of the DevOps type goals and to be able to do this, one of our pillars is environment management. And without zero copy cloning in Snowflake, it's really not feasible to do what you and I had been wanting to do for decades with data. Is like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could test our new stuff at the same scale as production so it doesn't break when we move it to production? Before Snowflake came up with the zero copy clone, you just literally could not do it unless maybe you were the DoD and had
Not
buckets and
really.
buckets and buckets of money, but even they couldn't do it, right? Because it took too long.
Yeah,
Because
that was the
even
problem.
if you had the hardware, it takes too long to copy hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of data in order to make a physical clone so that you could do the testing. I remember one of our DBAs, one of the jobs I was on pre-Snowflake, who said basically they needed 6 weeks to refresh our dev environment with a better data set. It was like 6 weeks. That is definitely not agile, right? Not agile at all.
No. And also, this kind of hits on the other stuff I've been writing about besides data collaboration. I came out with a whole series, Data to Value.
Yeah.
And like we have built like kind of a framework around that and metrics and measure it. But the reality is all this stuff, like I was burnt out with the consulting company before Snowflake came, but really it's really introduced stuff that we just couldn't do before. And the data to value thing is a really valid, transition and point, because it's not just that zero copy cloning or for the CI/CD type stuff. The fact that you can collaborate on near real time with across all these different industries, that's a game changer. Like people can actually, without copying delay, see the same data in Hawaii or New Zealand or anywhere. I mean, so you can be like Roche operating across, multiple continents, and you're getting to the point where people can collaborate in near real time with data that's secured. Like that. That's another thing. Like all the stuff we did before that with Hadoop and everything,
Oh
like
yeah.
that stuff. There was, before couldn't get away from copying. Yeah, I mean, it really made a massive difference.
Yeah, the security, because if you wanted the security, and even in the Oracle world, you could do encrypted table spaces. And I worked in the healthcare space. I could never get a DBA to do the encrypted table spaces because they said, well, A, it took too long, and B, it slowed down the queries. But then you get something like, and certainly the Hadoop world was the same way. It's like you had to apply your own encryption algorithms and track your keys. And then Snowflake comes along and says, oh, that's by default. Everything's encrypted automatically. You don't have to do anything. And no, it does, and it won't slow down your queries. And I had so many people questioning me for the first 2 years. How can we remove the Snowflake encryption? Because it has to be slowing down the queries. No, it doesn't have to be slowing down the queries. All the other technologies did. These Benoit and Terry built it in. So the engine was built knowing everything was going to be encrypted so that it could still have optimized queries. And people just didn't believe it. And this is where it got into seeing is believing. You had to actually try it. It's like, okay, well, let's just assume Snowflake's encryption slows you down. Let's go run your query. Oh, what? It's 100 times faster than it is on your unencrypted system. So does it matter if it's slowing it down?
Yeah, exactly.
It's still 100 times faster. I'm like, okay, yeah. And it's secured now. Yeah. So I think your data to value concepts and being able to do that, get data to value and do this collaboration in near real time, it has to be on something that is automated, right? In order to keep up with these things at that pace, and that combination of Snowflake and the true DataOps principles and things like DataOps.live and Coalesce and Fivetran. These are the things that make this possible. Like you said, earlier in our careers, when you came out of the Air Force and you were in the air, there's just no way you could do it. You just was not physically possible to achieve what we can achieve today by applying all of these ideas and these technologies.
Yeah, I think that's what's kept me going in this space is, I know you're retired, but
sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of.
But I'm still here talking about it.
You might just be as busy, but I'm just really excited about, like I said, the data products, the data automation, because I feel like what we can do now, Kent, is stuff we just never could do it even 5 years ago. And honestly, it's funny when you mentioned Fivetran, because I met George at the very first partners conference in Sonoma.
Yep.
And
I remember it.
I was kind of resistant because I was like, we could build this Fivetran thing in about 6 months, ourselves. And I actually, it's funny, on the bus, I rode up with the guy who was running Stitch too, and they ended up selling the Talend. And but I kept thinking, oh man, we could build something like this in 6 months. But the reality is, there's so much investment; it keeps getting better and better. But I had to give up the resistance. It's like it's just too easy to use. It's just
So why build it yourself if somebody's already built it? I mean, yeah, it might, like you said, it might seem, oh yeah, we could do that in 6 months, but hey, it already works today.
Exactly. And I think there's just a proliferation of more and more, not just those pipeline products, but data products that we'll see at the industry level, and they'll be shared on the Snowflake marketplace. So I think that's a big place it's going. I mean, I think it's really, really early, but I think there's just massive, massive opportunity there. And that's a lot of the reasons why I'm still, we're investing in building this data apps business on Snowflake, because I just think there's so much new fun and opportunity. It's going to be the next few years in data and automation AI. It's going to be amazing. I mean, you can already see that people got a lot of ideas from actually visually seeing the chat GPT evolve. I mean, that was there for several years, but just because the visualization and the way the interface worked, it allowed people to envision what the future could be like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my office mate, my dog here, is telling me it's time to wrap
I
up.
see that.
She's down there moving around now. So last question for you, Frank, is the non-technical question: is if you weren't doing data, what would you do?
Well, that's a tough one. I probably wouldn't have stayed in the Air Force. I think at least at this moment, I go back and forth on different things, but maybe I'd be I did a lot of heavy metal back in the day, so a singer for AC/DC or something.
All right.
I don't know. I think that's where I would go
with those glasses. You got the stage persona already started. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, Frank, thank you so much for being my guest today. And thanks to everyone else for joining us today and listening to our chat. Be sure to join us again in 2 weeks. It's going to be 2 weeks this time. When my guest is going to be another Data Vault. I almost said Data Vault because she's a Data Vault person too. Snowflake data superhero, Veronica Durgan.
Oh, Veronica's awesome.
Yeah. And so she's going to be on here in 2 weeks. But also be sure to like the replays of this podcast and tell your friends about the True Data Op podcast, so other folks can join in on all this fun that we're having here. Well, thanks again, Frank. Good to see you. Until next time, everybody, this is Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior, signing off. Have a great day.